Are we live? Yes, we're live. We're live. Happy hump day, everybody. Is it hump day? It is Wednesday, isn't it? It's not Tuesday. Yeah. Okay. I don't know why my days are already melding into one this week. Not really sure what's happening. Now, if you are listening live, can you please let me know that you can hear me properly? Because one thing I've started to notice now that I have moved my office into the front, into a different room, that I sound very echoey in here because it's a bigger room and there's lots of tiles and whatnot. So I'm trying to do this with my earphones in today, and bear with me one second. What? I just got a notification saying, we're having trouble posting to LinkedIn. It looks like you've reached LinkedIn's daily post limit. You may need to wait until tomorrow. What? What does that even mean? How does LinkedIn even have a daily post limit? That is ridiculous. I don't even know what that even means. Sorry, LinkedIn, if you're watching, LinkedIn's just kiboshed this for you today. So you'll have to check it out on either Facebook or YouTube. Well done, LinkedIn. Well done. Anyway, we are here today because I want to talk to you about the signs that you need to know for when it's time to reboot your customer experience. So often, in business, we take a lot of time and energy and we put it into customer service. And that is, as if you've joined us before, only really one component of the customer experience. And so then what happens is we don't really know to put our attention onto other areas of the business. And ultimately what happens is, the good old adage, what gets measured gets done. And because we're not measuring these things, because we're not paying attention and putting energy into these other areas of our experience in business, they fall to pieces. And so what I wanted to do today was give you some insights into how you can tell in your business that it's time to, in IT crowd terms, switch it off and turn it back on again. So basically, you can give your business a customer experience reboot. Now, why do I know these things? Well, by the way, I'm also running the gauntlet today because I am doing this live with my office door open, which means my dog can come and go or bark at thin air as he pleases. So this could be fun. So how do I know this? Well, so I spent a few years doing customer experience for the country, for Bunnings and for Officeworks. And, it taught me a few things. I'm also, I don't know if I shared this with you, I'm also on my way to becoming one of the very few formally recognized customer experience practitioners in Australia. So that's pretty exciting. And I have to study. It's like going back to school. I have to study. I have to do an exam. But cross your fingers for me that we'll get through it. And therefore, I can say that I am one of Australia's very few formally recognised customer experience practitioners. So that's why I get to help you with these insights today. So what's the first thing that you can look at in your business to help you understand whether or not your customer experience needs a kick in the ass or, to turn it off and turn it back on again? And it takes a bit more than that. I wish it was that simple, to be honest. But the first thing that I want you to consider is, and if you're not paying attention to this metric, I want you to find a way to start looking into it. And that is your customer retention, right? And retention means how loyal your customers are to your business, and what is hopefully you developing a brand. Because customer retention, the higher your customer retention, the lower so many other things have to be. The lower your marketing spend is, the lower it is to keep the cheaper it is to keep customers. Do you know, then also the higher your customer retention, the higher your profits, because customers who are loyal to a business are likely to spend 25 to 95% more than a brand new customer. So who doesn't want that? Now, how do you measure customer retention? Well, basically you figure out over a period of time how many of those customers came through your business and then how many of them returned. And it's really that simple. I remember doing some consulting work for a very, very small, not-for-profit kind of community retailer, op shop type scenario, like antiques dealer stuff. And one of the things that we wanted to work out was two things: her customer draw. So how far out was she drawing people in? And if they had been return customers, so what was her retention? So it was so simple that all I said to her was, I want you to ask them two things at the register. What's their postcode, and have they shopped here before? And from those very simple, and she wrote it down in an exercise book. So literally, if you're sitting there thinking, well, I don't have the systems to find out that stuff, it literally cost her a 55-cent exercise book and the will to find out, right? That's what it cost her. So what she actually learned was that she had quite an extensive customer draw that meant that she was becoming a destination, a travel destination for visitors outside that local community, right? So whereas majority of her marketing happened within a 5-kilometer kind of radius of her business, what she learned was she actually needed to increase her reach out to wider areas of Victoria, because people saw her as a regional destination. So she was in a suburb called Kuirup, and she had customers coming from half an hour plus away to visit her store because it was so unique. So if she hadn't gone and understood those metrics, she would have continued to market herself to that small base of customers within 5Ks of her and pretty much excluded the potential sales and customers that she could have got from that wider market. And then to find out that they actually loved her so much that many of them had become return customers because they were always curious, oh, what has she got in there now? I bet I could pick up a bargain. I bet I could pick up something unique, so she really did a fantastic job at drawing the crowds, but not from where she thought she was getting them, right? She kind of thought, presumed, assumed, and you know what they say about assumptions, they make an ass out of you and me, that most of her customers were locals, when in actual fact, they weren't. So customer retention is certainly one of the first things I want you to consider. How often are your customers coming back to you? Because if they're not coming back to you, then the reality is your costs involved in lead generation, customer acquisition, and then trying to, sustain and keep them there, there's probably a piece broken or a few pieces broken in your customer journey that is stopping them or challenging them from becoming loyal to your business, right? So if you don't have high customer retention, then there's certainly the opportunity to go and check out your customer journey map. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, feel free to hit me up and I can show you or talk to you about what that means. But you need to understand the journey that you're sending your customers on. And if they're not getting to the end, which is an advocacy and loyalty piece, then there's something back here that's breaking that opportunity. So the next thing, if you're a little bit bigger and you have teams, one of the first things to create a broken customer experience is when your teams act like they work in a silo. Now, for some of you who might not know what I mean by silo, they're those big concrete buildings that hold grain and wheat and flour and whatever else they hold. But essentially, a silo is a individual and separated piece of product from everything else around it. And you might see, 6 silos in a row. And what happens is in business, our teams act like those silos, like they're not connected, like they're not integrated, like they have nothing to do with each other, and they completely work as individuals or, as separate teams. Now, the reality is that if that is happening, you're breaking your customer experience, or you have broken your customer experience, because your customer needs, in essence, for them to get from the beginning of the customer journey to the end of it, which is advocacy and loyalty, they need a streamlined process, right? They need a streamlined journey. Now, what happens if you have teams that they have to deal with, and the first team is here, and the second team is here, and the third is here, and the fourth is here. Now, what happens? Your customer has to speak to every part of your business like they're a separate part of your business. Do you know how frustrating that is? And as a customer, you probably have had the situation where you have contacted a business or a brand and you've had to explain your circumstances or your situation, 3, 4, 5 separate times to 3, 4, 5 different people. So in essence, what you've done is you've broken, if that's something that you've experienced, that's what you're potentially doing to your customers, because your team aren't acting like one team, right? Consider your team under a dome. That's how they need to work. Like there is just one piece of glass over the top. It is transparent and everything underneath it works and integrates together as one. So how can you build a customer experience that is more like a dome for your customers, so it is transparent and visible and it is clear to understand how it all works, but ultimately also from an employee experience that they're not working separately. I was consulting to a building company a little while ago, and they had gone from a very, very small builder to quite a large builder quite quickly. And their teams didn't actually understand the impact that their work had on the very next team that, worked on the project. And so ultimately, there was very poor culture. Nobody really cared about the next team. They cared about getting their job done, but there was no care factor for the next part of the job. So if they didn't do their job properly, then that impacted the next team. But because they had this siloed way of doing business, it was kind of all care and no responsibility. They didn't see the impact that their work had on the next group. And then equally for the customer, when the customer would have to deal with this team and then they'd have to deal with the next team, every single time the customer would be inconvenienced because nobody that they spoke to understood the roles and responsibilities of the team before them or the team after them. So the customer would walk away wanting to bash their head against a brick wall because they were so frustrated. So if that sounds like something that is potentially happening in your business, that you have a culture of siloed teams who don't interact with each other, who don't understand the impact that their work has on the team before them or the team after them, then I want you to consider how you can create an inclusive culture where your team interact with each other and completely integrate their work and the way they do things, knowing how that project or that work that they complete impacts their teammates, whether they're in the same team or not, and the customer experience. Because ultimately, we're talking about the employee experience as well. And, surprisingly, or you might be surprised, the team don't really like it. They don't like working in silos. They might do it because it's habitual and that's kind of the culture that they came into. But when you change it up and you give them the opportunity to work together and share goals together and achieve together, that's the culture that creates a brand, right? That's the way to go about leading a group of people to achieve a vision. Working in silos certainly will not. So, customer retention going down or not even being measured, go and find out what you need to do to fix it. Siloed departments, got to smash down those silos. Then the other thing that I want you to consider is your team potentially being burnt out. So again, I know that it happens in the sense of if you are on the precipice, I love that word, such a great word. If you're on the precipice of expanding and scaling your business or your team or whatever it might be, and your numbers, there usually is a number that you have to hit to be able to not just justify but sustain that new scaling piece of your business, right? And usually what that means is to do that, you have to put the team under some usually pretty tough pressure, right, to get to that point, right? I know, for example, some businesses might say, well, we have to make a certain amount of sales before we can afford and sustain a new team member on the floor. But to make those sales means that the current team are pumping out work like nonstop and they're tired. So what I want you to consider is if that is something that you are currently experiencing in your business, that everybody is under the pump, everybody is getting burnt out, and the offset is that emotional turmoil kind of starts to come out of that, right? And that plays out at work. Don't ever tell a human being not to bring their home life not to bring their home life to work and vice versa, because they're one and the same. Like, we spend more time at work than we do at home these days. So the problem is that if you are pushing and pushing and pushing and there's no give, you are going to burn out your team. And if not, burn out yourself, because ultimately what you start to do is just put out fires. And I've been in that role and it fucking sucks, right? It sucks. It's not fun. I know there's an end goal, but to get to that end goal, I want you to consider the customer experience that you are delivering, because while you are pumping the team to get to that next level, potentially your customer experience is diminishing, right? Because certainly your employee experience is diminishing. And I promise you that if you have a crap employee experience, you have a crapper customer experience, no matter how good your journey map is, right? So if you are on your way to the next level in business, But to do that, you are having to put your team under some serious pressure. I want you to consider how you can improve. And yes, it's not a bad thing to be under pressure, but what else can you do to add value to the team to make sure that the customer experience keeps spinning the way that you want it to, right? It's merely like a Bermuda Triangle. We've got the team, we've got the customer, and we've got the goal. And we don't want any one part of those points to fall to pieces. Otherwise, if one falls, the whole thing collapses. So consider that. One of the best things that you can do if you are a leader in a business and you don't necessarily think things are going well, here's a hot tip. If the same mistakes keep being made, if you have to keep repeating yourself, and the same issues keep popping up, there is something wrong. So instead of constantly putting out fires, and I literally actually just had a conversation this morning with a business owner about the fact that the same issues keep popping up with a couple of their team. And they have tried various ways to go about resolving it. And ultimately, what resolved it was being candid. And if you don't know what candid means, it basically means being open and honest and no beating around the bush. You say what you think, and you don't just hold back for the sake of not hurting someone's feelings. So the business owner ended up being candid with the team to explain how they felt about their behavior and about the issues, the same issues that kept popping up time after time, no matter what they were trying to do. If that sounds like something happening in your business, that means a part of the experience is broken. It might mean that you need to review some of your procedures. It might mean that there needs to be some policy change. It might mean that there's some systems that need to be configured to stop or mitigate those problems continually coming up. If they're a behavioral situation, I want you to do what this business owner did today. And I want you to frame a conversation with your team about the fact that you are going to be candid. You are going to tell it like it is, and it's not for the sake of being rude, and it's not for the sake of ultimately wanting to hurt somebody's feelings, but it is for the sake of being upfront and honest about what is actually going on. And you invite them to do the same back, right? But just remember, you have to be able to give what you have to be able to take what you give, right? Sometimes we don't like hearing that it's us that is the problem. But one thing that I learned early on in my leadership career was that if there is constantly a problem, then maybe you might be best to look in the mirror. Because when it comes to total accountability, that's your business. What did you do to mitigate that problem? And if everything you've done in the past hasn't worked, I would encourage you to consider that you need to be a little bit more candid. You need to be upfront and honest with your team, and you need to encourage a culture where they can do the same. Because the result is an improved employee experience, and sometimes the people involved might deselect. They might leave the business. But you know what? That is okay as well, because sometimes that also is the best gift for them, right? It's so crazy how many people I've seen leave a business and you think, oh God, I can't believe they're finally gone, but they fail up, right? How many people do you see them come back 6 months later and they're the general manager or something? You're like, what? But that just means they weren't the right person for that job, right? But they are the right person for another job, just not that one. but you're only going to get to the point of understanding that if you can have open, honest, timely, and candid conversations with them. And if the problem is not a behavioral one, it's a business one or a systems one, then you still need to have that type of communication available in your business. Because the quicker that you can find a result, quicker you can find a way to fix it, and the quicker you can make that change, the less time you're going to waste spending putting out fires on issues that keep coming up time and time again. Right? How nice would that be? How nice would it be to just get one step closer to a value-driven brand, to a value-driven life? All right. The last one I want you to think about is all of your customer experience touch points are a copy and paste. And what I mean by that is every single customer gets exactly the same treatment no matter the situation. When you are dealing with humans, and we talk about the human experience, right? I want you to consider the customer journey that you take your customers on and how that differs for each person. How do you personalize your experience considering you work with humans? And whether you are a B2B or a B2C, it doesn't matter. B2Bs still have humans behind that B. So if you look at, I'll tell you a funny story. Every now and then I used to stand on the door at Bunnings when I worked in the stores, and the job of the door person is literally their role is called door greeter. And one day I was standing on the door and greeting customers as they entered, and so customers walk through the door and I'm like, hi, how you going? And customers go, yeah, good, thanks. And another customer comes through, hi, how you doing? Yeah, good, thanks. And another customer comes in, I go, hey, how you going? And he's like, shit house, right? So if you had the opportunity to personalize that experience, how would you do it? Would you turn around and copy and paste, right? And say, oh, that's great. Clearly it's not. Or would you say, oh, that's no good. Can I help with anything? Or anything I can help with? Or how would you change it up? And even the smallest way matters, because what it tells your customers is that they matter and that you're listening and you're paying attention, right? It doesn't mean that you have to document something that says, and if a customer comes in and they're not happy, make sure you say this, right? Just be a human being and understand that not every situation can be made the same for every customer. So if you're a leader of a business and you're observing the way your team and you do business, and you think to yourself, that's starting to look like a bit of Control C and Control V going on around here, then that too is a telltale sign that your customer experience needs a bit of a reboot. So they're my 5 signs for you as business leaders, owners, entrepreneurs, extravaganzas, goal getters, value-driven brand makers, for you to understand what just some of the points that you can consider how to improve or when to improve your customer experience. As I mentioned before, if you don't know what a customer experience journey map is, please feel free to get in touch. You can message me or DM me. Hit me up in my DMs, only for that. But otherwise, if you potentially know of any other insights and telltale signs on when it's time to put a boot up your customer experience, then feel free to leave some comments in there. I love learning, by all means. I know I don't know it all, but let's help businesses start to learn a bit more than they knew before. So that is it from me today. I won't be around this Sunday. I know I keep saying I'm going to a family lunch, but this time I'm going to a family lunch. So I won't be around on Sunday, but we will be back next Wednesday. And until then, please go out and create value for somebody else in your life, because what goes around comes around. I'm Aileen Day. Until next week, have a good one.